Hello there guys, I'm Unstable Voltage and today I'm going to be taking a look at Blood Bowl 2. Blood Bowl 2 is developed by Cyanide Studios and it's published by Focus Home Interactive, and Blood Bowl 2 is the latest game in the Blood Bowl franchise. For those of you who don't know what Blood Bowl is, it started off as a tabletop dice-based game over 20 years ago now from Games Workshop, and it's basically a violent version of American football played in the Warhammer universe. Now, Cyanide Studios created the original Blood Bowl game a number of years ago now. It has had a few releases and re-releases since then. I think there was the Blood Bowl Ultimate Edition, and then the Blood Bowl Chaos Edition, which was the most recent one, which came out in 2012. But this is the newest version that just came out in September 2015, and we're going to be taking a look at it, comparing it a little bit to the originals and having a look what you get for your money and see what the game is like. Now, if you have seen the original, it was a relatively pretty game for its time. There's only so much you can do with a tabletop based board game. They have gone through certain efforts to make the game look better. They're using a completely new engine and lots of the stuff in here is nicely rendered, but there are a few issues and things that we need to go through. Now, this game is available on multiple platforms, so it's available on PC, PlayStation and Xbox. I also believe that there is cross-play, so someone playing on one system can play against somebody playing on another, although I've not actually been able to confirm that at this point. But this is the PC version here that I am playing and reviewing. Now, the first thing that I should point out is let's just quickly go into the settings and see what we have got here. Now, the first page is just general stuff for adjusting the cameras. That I'm not too interested in. We've got options for sound. We've got sound effects, music, and commenters. That's absolutely fine. The coach is just where you set up your account and pick your portrait. Fine. But let's look at the graphics options here. All you have are these very low to very high quality options. Just the presets. There's no ability to change anything else at all, which I find really, really odd for a game like this. There are resolution options, but there's no windowed mode or borderless full screen mode, and the only other two options are to enable the spectators and enable the grass. Now, I have to be honest, the spectators and the grass don't look particularly brilliant. Now, the problem is if you turn them off, the stadiums look very, very plain and very, very empty. If you turn them on, then whenever there's panning shots around the stadium, the frame rate does seem to tank and become quite choppy. And although this isn't the highest end system in the world, it can run Arkham Knight, it can run Battlefield 4 and The Witcher 3, Ark Survivor Evolved. So this machine can run some pretty graphically intensive games at very high settings with very little problems. So I find it difficult to understand why it struggles in a game like this. Maybe there is some more optimization that is required. Another thing that you often find is quite annoying is these two guys here, Bob Bifford and Jim Johns. Really difficult to say. Bob Bifford and Jim Johnson. I think that's the point. They're supposed to be difficult to say. Whenever these guys talk, you get subtitles. You can never turn those subtitles off. There is no option for it. So what else do we have that we can do? Well, first of all, we'll just quickly point out Cabal TV. That is just a replay mode that allows you to replay games that you've played yourself, but also to watch other community games that have been going on recently as well. And then you have the campaign. There's league matches, friendly matches, and league and team management. Well, first of all, the campaign gives you a few different save slots for the campaign. Now, the thing to point out about the campaign is it's relatively short. I've only played about it says I've played 4 matches, so I'm just about to start match 5. So I've only played 4 matches in the campaign, and I'm already 26% of the way through the campaign on this run. You can only play as the humans in the campaign. So you've got a very, very short campaign, and there's very little replayability value. The campaign mainly serves as a tutorial for the game to teach you the mechanics. The first few matches have a reduced and simplified rule set, and the game introduces you to new mechanics and new concepts as you go through from match to match. Unfortunately, there are still quite a few mechanics of the game that aren't explained all that well within the tutorial system. And the problem comes is a lot of these mechanics are only explained once you accidentally stumble into a situation where they become relevant. So if you don't stumble into one of those situations, the game doesn't actually bother to tell you what that particular mechanic is in advance. So that is one thing that is problematic. Again, because the actual tutorial is built into the campaign, if you already know how the game works, playing the campaign becomes even more pointless. So the campaign is quite short, and you've only got one race to choose from. But the single player has never been the main focus in these games anyway, although saying that, in the original Blood Bowl, especially Blood Bowl Chaos Edition, there were more game modes to choose from. The campaign had a lot more customization, you could play as different races and different teams, and there was basically a lot more content there if you just wanted a single player campaign. But what you can actually do in Blood Bowl 2 is you can either just have a friendly match. Now, a friendly match gives you the option between playing a local match or an online match. So obviously you can play against somebody else online, or you can play a local match which allows you to play against an AI opponent, or you can play in hot seat mode on the same machine. Now, one thing that's worth noticing is when you actually play in a friendly match, is you can only use the preset teams. Now, it looks like there's a lot of teams. If I was to click on here and go through all the list of teams, it looks like there's quite a lot. But what you actually find is for each of the different races, there are 3 teams. So if we look at humans, there's 3 teams. If we look at orcs, there's 3. If you look at dwarfs, there's 3. And there's 8 races in total in the entire game. So that means there's a total of 24 teams here that you can choose from. And even if we go into these particular teams here, and we can go into the team roster, you don't have the ability to really make any huge differences with these teams. You can't sort of change anything around. They're all preset. So there's no real customization if you are playing in a sort of friendly game. So the main meat and potatoes of it comes when you are playing in a league. Now, what playing in a league allows you to do is to create your own team. So let's go ahead and just create a team here. Now, as you can see, as I said before, there are 8 races to choose from. Humans, orcs, dwarves, Skaven, high elves, dark elves, Bretonnians, and chaos. Now, that is actually quite low compared to the number of different races that are offered in Blood Bowl Chaos Edition. I'm not sure of the exact number, but I think there's at least double, possibly even getting on to 20. There's quite a few more in there. Now, there are 2 other races that are actually offered as DLC, and they were pre-order bonuses, although I'm sure that they will come along as paid DLC later on for those people who didn't pre-order and want to get them. And those are Lizardmen and the Wood Elves, so 2 different races there. That means that they're probably going to open the gates for lots of new races as DLC further down the line, which again is a little bit of a shame. I understand this is a new game, and obviously it does take time and money to develop all of the different races and build all of the models and implement them into the game, recording all the sounds for them and everything like that. But at the end of the day, playing something like Chaos, playing something like Blood Bowl, the Chaos Edition, has a lot more races to choose from. So straight off the bat, this feels like you're getting a little bit less for almost double the money. Now, there is some slight customization in here. If we go in and pick our race, for example, let's pick the Orcs. And we can choose a team name and a motto. We don't really care what that is, so I'm just going to put any old random junk in there. So the only customization you really have is you can pick your team logo, which appears on your jersey. And then you can pick a few different jersey colours for each of the different teams. So we'll pick our jersey colour, and then we'll hit next. And again, you need to pick your stadium, and there's a few different stadiums to choose from. Again, there's only about 5. We'll give our stadium a random name, and we will create. Now, I'm not going to let the roster populate automatically here, because I want to show you the player purchasing. So most of the teams have 5 or 6 different player types that you can have. Basically, players with different skills. You always have a basic lineman. Some of the races have a large monstrous unit, like the troll here in the Orcs, and then you have things like your throwers, your blitzers, your catchers, and sometimes you might have some special units. So they all have different sort of prices, and there's a limit to the different numbers you can have on each team. So if we just go ahead and just pick the lineman, for example. So we can change his name, and the only other options for customization is the head. So there's a few different heads to choose from. There's actually 12 different heads. Now again, in the Chaos Edition of Blood Bowl, you could actually choose a different skin for their uniform. So instead of actually having all of your linesmen looking the same, just with different faces, you could actually give them slight variations on their uniform, which certainly gives them more character, because otherwise they all tend to look exactly the same, which is a little bit disappointing. And what you can do once you've actually gone ahead and created your team, we don't actually have a team here because there's no players in the team, but once you actually have a team, you can join that team into a league, and you can either play solo, so you can just make your own single player league, or you can use it to play multiplayer. So those are the main options there. So there isn't an awful lot of customization involved in the actual the team creation. Again, certainly not as much as there was in Blood Bowl Chaos Edition. But let me just show you the gameplay, and we're going to go in and do a friendly match. We'll do it on local. We'll leave it on medium difficulty. I'm going to go ahead and play as one of the human teams, just because they are relatively straightforward. And we'll go ahead and play against the orc. So let's go in. We'll just pick one of the sort of... Well, let's pick one of the basic stadiums. That one will do. I'm going to put the turn timer on 4 minutes. Normally the turn timer is 2 minutes. That is the default rules. But I'm going to go ahead and put it on 4, just because obviously I'm going to be talking about the game as playing. So we go into our inducements. This is where you can basically choose things like additional re-rolls, bribing the referee, getting wizards and things like that. I'm not really going to go too much into the mechanics of actually playing the game. So we are actually just going to go straight into playing itself, and I can show you a bit more about it.
Ready, steady, bowl.
So the game doesn't take too long to load, luckily, and this is actually just installed on a HDD, not even an SSD.
Welcome back, Blood Bowl.
Now, as you can see, the frame rate here is already a little bit choppy. Now, I am recording while I'm doing this, but I'm actually recording using Shadowplay, which has very little to no system impact. Especially shouldn't have it on a game like this.
The referee has been bribed. According to the twerper feed, all guild rates have been applied.
So you can see it's quite stuttery as the camera pans across. And the graphics aren't particularly all that good. I mean, bear in mind that the only graphics options are the graphics presets, and we've got it running on very high. So we've got this game looking as good as it's possible to get this game looking. The grass doesn't look particularly good. The character models aren't particularly detailed, and there isn't an awful lot of variety between them either. I know some of them are different shapes and sizes, but that's just because they are different player types. Some of the effects are nice, like this little thing here with the depth of field. I mean, it does look quite good. And let's remember, of course, that you normally play this game by being at this sort of viewpoint. You can actually zoom right out and just look at it from a top-down view like this, or you can actually zoom right in and get really close to the action if you so desire. But the normal viewpoint is up here. So one of the first things is actually the animation cycles. They can take quite some time. This is the initial setup phase where you actually position all of your players before the match starts. Now, you can just move everyone around individually. If I say, right, I want this guy to go and stand over here, but then I've got to wait for him to move there, because I can't move this guy here and then move this guy here at the same time. He has to wait for this guy to finish his animation, then it'll let him move. I want to move this guy, but he can't move until this guy's finished his animation. And while you're doing all of this, the timer's still ticking down. So it's wasting time, and you can't turn these animations off. Now, you can save some presets, and if we actually switch between the presets, it will actually move all of the players at the same time. So there's a quicker way of doing things. But you still have to spend quite a lot of time sitting around waiting for the animation cycles to finish. I'm going to go in and just put all my players in the center position, because I like that for a nice violent start. So let's go ahead and just confirm that that's where we want all of our players to be. The opposition will set up their team. Now, if you don't know the rules of the game, quite simply, what you have is a ball. I start with the ball here, and I have to kick it into my opponent's half. Hopefully it'll land there. But the idea is to get the ball, get it into the opponent's end zone, and score a touchdown. And we've got a little event there that basically allows us to reposition all of our players, even after the kickoff. But we're going to keep things how they are. But instead of just having to get the ball to your opponent's end zone and score a touchdown, you do so by beating the snot out of the opposing team. So that's basically the aim of the game. So there are various things like tackle zones and blocking, which is basically just sort of punching your opponent in the face. You get bonuses by having multiple players next to an enemy player because it gives you more strength, therefore you get bonus dice rolls. Each enemy player has a tackle zone, so as you can see that guy got to roll 2 dice because he has 2 players next to me, where he actually has 3. And he gets to choose which is the best dice out of the 2 that he rolls. Some dice have negative effects, so you do have to be careful with what you're doing. And every player who's still standing has a tackle zone around them, and if you try and move through or out of that tackle zone, there's a chance that they can trip you up. And if you get tripped up, then the game goes into what's called a turnover, where your turn ends and it goes over to your opponent's turn. So it's actually started off where we've taken the kickoff and it's the AI that is having its turn. Now, it actually takes quite some time for the AI to process its turns. I don't think it's a thinking issue. The AI seems to make its decisions quite quickly, but the AI seems to have to wait for the same animation cycles as the player does, which can often mean that if you've got a game of Blood Bowl is 16 turns. It's 2 halves, 8 turns in each half. And if you've got 11 players on the pitch for each team, it can actually take quite a bit of time. And I've been looking at matches around about upwards of 40 minutes to an hour to actually go through this. So, as you can see, it now starts my turn. And I've got 4 players down here on the ground. Now, you can get players up by clicking on them. And then if you click again, you can either tell them to stand up or blitz. Blitz is an action you can perform once per turn that allows one player to move and attack, or allows one player to stand up and move. Now, you can get someone to stand up just by double clicking on them. Now, if I go through these next guys and double click on them, I can't just double click on them because I have to wait for the previous guy to finish his animation cycle. So once again, these animation cycles that you can't turn off mean it's taken me far too long just to get these guys to stand up. They also can't do anything because they've all basically been knocked on their arse. Now, the interface isn't too difficult to understand. You can actually see where we can move to. You can also see these little zones around here that say -1, -2. These are actually showing me where tackle zones are. So if I was to move into this space here, I'm in the tackle zone of one opponent, which is this guy. If I was to move into this zone here, I'd be in the tackle zone of 2 guys, which is this guy and this guy. So you can easily see where tackle zones are. You also see some of these little squares have got dice on them, which basically means if I wanted to run this guy into this, because normally he only has 6 movement, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I can actually try and move an extra space or an extra 2 spaces by going for it, which means I actually have to roll some successful dice rolls to make sure I don't trip over. If I trip over, it's a turnover, and the turn goes over to my opponent. So let's instead go and stand next to this guy here. So I'm moving into his tackle zone, and now I've got 2 guys against 1. I can go in and roll the dice. So we'll roll 2 dice. And we have 2 options. We can either choose Defender Stumbles, which we can't see because of the things in the way, or we can have both down. Now, we both have block, so I want to pick Defender Stumbles, and then I can try and shove that guy back. And we can either have the option to stay where we are, or follow him onto the square he was. We want to follow him. Now, this is one of the problems that I do have, is when you're actually choosing that option to follow, sometimes if the camera moves slightly while you're trying to do that particular thing, then you can click on the wrong one. So let's see if I can get that to happen. Let's just move this guy into the tackle zone here. And I'm now going to get this guy to blitz in by clicking here. You can see his blitz icon has enabled. That's because I want him to move and attack at the same turn. So again, we're going to have 2 dice to roll. Now, we don't want the both down because he has block and I don't. So that would mean that I go down and that'll be a turnover. So we're just going to push him backwards. So if the camera moves slightly or zooms in and out, sometimes the mouse pointer can move from one of these to the other as the box moves around. As you can see, as I zoom in and out, I'm not moving the mouse, but it's moving on to different options. So the interface can be a little bit clunky. But I think it does a good enough job of actually showing you what's going on. You can see at a glance by looking at the field what your options are. Again, I do think it relies on you having a certain knowledge of the game and how the game mechanics work. Just trying to wing it and hoping that the sort of interface is going to help you out isn't all that useful. But that's pretty much all I can move on this turn. I guess I could move this guy into this space and just cause a bit more of a front line. Let's go ahead and end the turn. Let the AI have one more. Now, the AI so far that I've played against does seem to be particularly bad. Now, in this instance, it's not too terrible. They at least have picked up the ball. But I have noticed quite a few instances where the AI tends to ignore the ball completely and just spends all of its time beating up on your players, which is perfectly fine. It's definitely beneficial to you if all of your opponent's team are lying on their backs. But I have had games where the AI has just completely ignored the ball for 7 turns in a row, allowing me to get a very easy win. So the AI is a little bit dumb. So what that guy did there is he actually rolled an attacker down, which was a bad dice roll, and then he used one of his team re-rolls to roll again, and he still only got an attacker down, which meant that he lost the roll and the game turned over. So they hardly got to move at all, and now it's my turn. So I'm going to use my big ogre here to pound this guy in the face, and we're going to go for defender down. We're going to push him backwards, and we are going to follow him through. So not only are you knocking opponents down, but you do have the option to stun them, like these guys here with the stars around the head. You also have the option to completely knock them out as well. You can also foul people. There's quite a few different things that you can do here. Now, we could go and try and get the ball from this guy. It's a little bit difficult because we don't actually have anybody who is next to him, and it's going to be difficult to get around the tackle zone. So what we could do is we could move this guy around here. Now, this guy would be going for it. This guy could try and move out, but he's in a tackle zone. So he's got a 67% chance to dodge if he tries to move out of that tackle zone. If he fails, then that'll be a turnover, which we don't want to happen. So what we could do here, let's do a few of the things that we can. We can go ahead and attack this guy. Now, this guy only has a single dice roll, which is bad, because he has the same strength. And he doesn't have any support. If we go to this guy has 2 dice rolls because he's getting the additional strength from this guy stood next to him. So 2 dice rolls is always better. Now that would be very bad because we would go down. So we're just going to push the guy back. And we can choose where we push him to. And we can follow him if we wish. So what we can do now is we can use this guy to attack this one. Now he's only got a single dice roll. This guy also only has a single dice roll, so it's very, very risky trying to do that. We could move this guy up here, and now he's got 3 guys next to him. So that gives us +1 strength and +1 strength, gives us 2 dice rolls. So let's go in and do that. And this would be both down, but that's fine because our guy actually has block. So in the case of both down, we stay standing. So we knock him over, but we don't have the opportunity to follow. So what we could do here is we could move this guy up over here. Now he has to go through quite a few tackle zones to get there, which is very, very dangerous. We could try and knock some of these guys over, but we don't have a huge chance of doing so. So let's just go and see if we can blitz the ball carrier. We managed to dodge the tackle. We only get a single roll, and it's just a push. Now push isn't all that useful because it doesn't make him drop the ball. But we can follow him, and these guys are kind of penned in. We can't actually blitz anymore. If we try and run over here, there's a good chance that we'll be tripped. And we actually dodged both of them, which is really nice. So let's just see if we can move this guy up and just cause him some more problems. Again, there's a good chance that we might get tripped. And we actually managed to avoid them all, which is very, very unusual in this game. So let's go ahead and end the turn. So as you can see, on a 4-minute turn, I had just over 2 minutes left. And even with talking about what I'm doing, 2 minutes is more than enough. So now it's the AI's turn. He's having to get his players up off the ground. And you can see that issue again where the animation is taking quite a bit of time for it to happen. So it really does slow down the pace of the game. Now the game doesn't seem to have any anti-aliasing either. It may be an issue caused by the grass, but certainly if you look over here at the cameramen, for example, it might be difficult to see. And I'm just going to move away from the action slightly, but everything's very, very janky. And if you look at the crowd as well, all of the crowd members have the same face. There's about 3 or 4 variations in the clothing that they wear, but the crowd really is uninspired. And I know that that's not the purpose of the game, because you could quite easily just be looking at it from, you know, sort of a top-down angle and not really see the crowd. But even here you can see how sort of lifeless the crowd is. Not to mention, of course, every time there is a block or a tackle, the camera actually zooms in and gives you sort of this angle where you can quite easily see the crowd and see how sort of terribly animated they are. And I think it's the grass that causes the performance issues, but without the grass, it just looks like the field is painted on, which is really bad. One other slight issue goes with the commentators. Now, the voice acting for the commentators is absolutely brilliant. They're quite comical, they have some good lines. Unfortunately, though, outside of the campaign, the lines that they give you get repeated over and over quite often, and you'll soon find that every match you're hearing them say the same things multiple times. Now, I know that this isn't anything new when it comes to sports games that have commentators. You very often find that the commentators end up repeating themselves. Not really an awful lot that can be done about that, to be quite honest. But considering the game isn't all that heavy in terms of voice acting, I'm quite surprised that they didn't actually put a few more lines in there just to give it a bit more variety. Occasionally I still hear the odd quip that I haven't heard before, but most of the time I'm thinking, yeah, I've heard that, and I've heard that, and it's just the same stuff repeated over and over again, which is a little bit of a shame. So what do I think about the game? Well, if you like Blood Bowl, you are probably going to enjoy this game. It works just the way that Blood Bowl should. Some of the rules have been changed slightly. Certainly some of the statistics that the human teams have seem to have been adjusted a little bit, which is quite surprising. That is a really bad roll. I can use a team re-roll. Well, team roll didn't work because of his loner ability, so we wasted the team roll. Doesn't 50-50 chance that the team roll's not going to work on loners, but it's always worth trying it. And we just push him out of the way. We can try and see if we can get the ball holder. Probably won't work. Probably result in a turnover. Yeah, both. Well, we have block, so we can actually knock the ball holder down. And we didn't manage to catch the ball, unfortunately, but we weren't trying to catch it directly, so it's not a turnover. See if we can knock this fella down. Yep, so that's going to be bad. That's going to be a both down. We can't use our re-roll. We've already used it, and that's a turnover. So, like I said, the rules have changed slightly from the original Blood Bowl game, but if you are a Blood Bowl fan, then you might still enjoy this. The only thing I've got against it at the moment is it still has some performance issues. There doesn't seem to be nearly as much customization as there was in the older game, and even though it does look better than the older game, by today's standards, it still looks kind of low budget, which is a little bit disappointing considering it is a Games Workshop licensed game. He's just tried to pick up the ball and he's failed, so he's used one of his team re-rolls to re-roll the dice, and he succeeded the second time around. So this game is currently priced at £35 UK compared to Blood Bowl 1 Chaos Edition, which is £20. So this is almost, but not quite, double the cost. And also bear in mind that if you get the Blood Bowl Chaos Edition, you're getting, I think, at least 16 different races, whereas in this game you're only getting 8, and if you want to get more, then it's most likely going to be paid DLC down the line. That's not to say that there won't be some sort of collector's edition or complete edition or chaos edition of this game in a few years time. Maybe once they've released a handful of different races as DLC, maybe added a new game mode or two, they will re-release the game with those extra options. But as it stands at the moment, I think that the value in this game is going to come from just playing against your friends in multiplayer. The single player element, the campaign, is certainly very shallow, and if you're playing this game for a single player experience, I wouldn't recommend it. Campaign is too short and the AI is too dumb. If you want to play against other people, then it's probably fine for you, but again, not as much customization as you would have probably hoped for. All in all, though, from what I've played of it so far, I am having a good time with it. I am enjoying it, and I will probably play it a little bit more. But I think in terms of value for money, you might want to wait until it is reduced slightly, or at least wait to see if they start bringing out other races as DLC, and have a look how much they are going to cost. I've been Unstable Voltage, this has been Blood Bowl 2, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then, goodbye for now.